Welcome to the Painter's Dialectic Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Green, an artist and educator living in New York City. And today, on May 19th, 2025, we had our next session of the Artist-Errant Meditative Group event, and I introduced the idea of spaciousness in meditation. I introduced the philosophical idea. I guided everyone through a meditation on spaciousness. Then we went to a period of art making. And then we had a lengthy discussion at the end, so be sure to listen to the end and feel free to follow along with the class at home. Enjoy. Okay. Welcome everyone to another group session. For those of you who are new or watching us online, my name is Josh Green, and I am an artist and art educator living in New York City. I received my MFA from Alfred University, and I got my spiritual training to teach meditation at Tibet House and Dharma Moon here in Manhattan. And I've also studied Western traditions, spiritual traditions at the International Alchemy Guild, other organizations. So I've put together a website. I've been working on the website. You can see the Spiritual Friends group there where you can read about it. I'm putting all of our recorded sessions there. If you want to go watch them there, they're also on YouTube and Spotify. The Fundamentals of Drawing course is there for anyone who wants to improve their drawing skills, or drawing technique. And once you've gone through that, you can take the bar drawing course, which is very rigorous. Um, and I have videos of me drawing the exercises all the way through. So you don't miss anything. There's no missing pieces you have to put together. All right, so this is everything's free, and I want to keep it free. If you feel like sending me a gift, that always makes me happy. You can do that through Venmo at Josh Green 114. No need to though. Um, all right, so the schedule for the talk is I'm going to present a philosophical perspective on today's theme, which is spaciousness, for about 15 minutes. Then we'll do a guided meditation about 15 minutes, and then we'll move into art making right after that. And this will be art making as meditation, and you can do whatever you like. That's about 30 minutes. And then we have a long group discussion at the end where you can ask questions about meditation practice. You want to share your experience, you want to share any ideas that came up, or you want to share your artwork. That's always fun. And then we do a little dedication at the end. So, spaciousness. Uh, Till this is actually, I believe, a German motif called a Rückenfigure, right? Where you see the figure from the back in front of a vast landscape. I always thought that the Rückenfigure was great to get that sense of spaciousness. So I want to talk about this today because a few of you are taking private lessons with me, and we're going on a couple months now. And you're probably wondering where all this is going, or how do I know if I'm doing well? And I thought this is a good concept. It begins emerging as you have a consistent meditation practice, but also it becomes an advanced technique years down the road, something that you really rely on, this sense of space. So I don't know if you've ever been on a mountaintop or on top of a tall building and you're just in awe of this vast space. That spacious feeling is something that slowly grows over time as you do a consistent practice. And meditation progress is very subtle and only happens over a long period of time. But it is happening. You just have to stick with it, and the sense of space begins to grow and grow. Usually, in the beginning, we have all these ideas of what our spiritual progress will look like or what we will achieve. And these early expectations usually lead us to disappointment. We are often unwilling to deviate from our expectations. It can be scary or destabilizing at times to embrace the uncertainty of spiritual training. Eastern spirituality is doing really well in the West because it has good propaganda, right? Westerners feel safer taking on Eastern practices because of these, the propaganda we see about it. And many of the Western religions we grew up in have been a big letdown, for Westerners because a lot of the groups that we meet are very dogmatic or rigid, or they're overly theosophical instead of, or theological instead of practical, right? How do I apply this to life? How do I bring this in? And I think that's why Westerners like Eastern practice, because it's practical. But what's important to realize is that in an Eastern spiritual system, it developed in an entirely different environment, right? We as Westerners miss many of the obvious cultural cues because we are not Eastern, right? We rely on translations and translators of these traditions to fill in the gaps. And I know many of you here were raised in Judaism or Christianity or Islam, and there's still a beating heart in these traditions. You can't approach it as a fundamentalist. You have to approach it with an openness and a flexibility that can become a personal journey, something experiential and direct rather than theological and conceptual, right? Or belief based. These direct experiences. It is important to study spirituality, but it's much more important to practice it, to apply it to your daily life, to the situations of your life. Life is the real teacher. The circumstances you find yourself in are where you're really going to make progress, especially the challenging ones. It's not an escape from life, it's a way to go deeper into it. So we want to use our spirituality or whatever system you're in to know yourself, to know your mind, and understand your relationship to the world. This is why when I teach spirituality, I try to always frame it in a Western context, even if I'm presenting Eastern ideas. It's the common culture we all grew up in. These ideas are deeply ingrained in us, you know? One of the most important Western ideas is the good. For everything we do, the point in doing it is that it will achieve some good result. Why else do it, right? The point of going to the doctor is to heal. That's the good of the doctor. We call the plumber when the drain is clogged, and that's the good of the plumber, right? The aim or the point of anything worth doing is the good. And if we could discover an ultimate good, a unifying good to guide every action of our life, imagine how beneficial that would be and how much clarity that would bring to your life. It's worth contemplating this. And this goes all the way back to the ancient Greek philosophers. This is what they asked, what is the good? What is the good life? So in the West, and most of us are in America, in the West, the supreme good is happiness. That's American culture, right? And in the American Constitution, it says that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think it's a little funny that they say pursuit instead of having, because people disagree on what constitutes as happiness, you know? So here we go. American happiness right here. The common Americans equate happiness with sensual pleasure. I mean, these people look pretty happy. They're smiling, right? They got a beverage. They're young, they're fit, they're attractive, they're single, they're on a boat in the Caribbean. How much better can it get than that, right? Right? Um, and people do pursue this. Uh, I mean, that's American. Look at any college. Look at any people with expendable income and free time. They're chasing this. But guess what? Youth runs out, you get diseases. You get addicted to drugs, maybe. If you party too hard, you get old, you get fat, you have weekly visits to the doctor, you start having less sex. Well, how do you stay happy for the whole rest of your life? What about the whole rest of your life when you're not young? What do you do with that American dream then? So, how does this extend to the world's poor, right? Here these people are in their common kitchen, right? Just a slab of cement, no running water. You can see a wood burning stove back there. They're all sharing this. They probably get their water from a well. You know, if you're among the world's poor, you're not, these people aren't meditating. They're not worried about spiritual development. That's not what's on their mind. They're saving up to build another wood burning stove or to get a bicycle to ride into town. You know, these are the things that will definitely increase their happiness. And imagine if they had plumbing there, access to clean running water, something like the shower in all of our houses, right? That would be absolutely life-changing for them. Every day we go step in that shower, and not only do we have it, it's warm. And we run gallons of water down the drain while we think about our life and what we don't have and how we're not in a boat in the Caribbean, you know? Well, maybe, you're a middle class or rich, spoiled Westerner, and you can see through the shallowness of the boat in the Caribbean scenario. You're more serious. You're going to do something meaningful. So you're going to pursue happiness through status, through getting honors, right? Being an expert, being an important person with a high-paying job, right? If you mix both of those together, you have the college student, right? The Caribbean boat and that. So we see at a basic level, we're all seeking security, right? Either we're poor and we're seeking the minimum to live, or we got it and we continue seeking into this extravagant pleasure seeking, right? Or if we get bored of that, we continue trying to secure our survival needs through status in the group by standing out, distinguishing ourselves, getting a degree, becoming an expert. And then if you're sick of that too, you might even go off to a temple and meditate, the height of this security. But what is real happiness? What is real fulfillment? What is real spirituality, right? And if you remember from last month's class, I introduced the idea of hedonia. This is all hedona that I've showed you. Seeking fulfillment by external means, getting your life in a certain shape, getting your mind in a certain shape. This goes all the way back to ancient Greeks. This is nothing new. And it leads to neurosis. It leads to a dependency. When you don't have it, you're in hell. You're just scrambling to get to that dream. One day I'll have all these things and I'll be happy. If you have it, you're paranoid. You're scared you're gonna lose it because you can't control what's outside of you. There we go, hedonia. There's the hedonic man right there, like off the cover of a Vogue magazine. Beautiful, fit, young, stylish, rich, right? That's what we actually want if we're honest. Right? Eudaimonia, it's a long word. It could barely fit into the slide. Eudaimonia is what we're sadly missing in American culture, at least. There's Socrates, the beginner of this philosophical tradition. There's Plato at his feet, and he's drinking his hemlock. He's not worried about death. These survival instincts aren't the basis of his uh, inner wellness, right? He'll happily drink that and be a martyr of eudaimonia because he's imagining the greater good echoing down through history, and that's exactly what happened. That's the founder of Western philosophy right there. I don't think he was that fit. As in the picture. There you go. Ron takes some notes for the figure drawing class. But eudaimonia is a type of happiness that is final. It's an end because it's not dependent on external circumstances. It's a type of self-sufficiency. That sense of lack goes away as you progress in an authentic spiritual tradition, if you're really doing it. This is the good of spirituality. The ultimate good is to gain this self-sufficiency, right? We could consider this a type of enlightenment, right? A self-sufficiency. But the problem is it's personal. Buddha was very enlightened, but guess what? He couldn't enlighten anyone else. Jesus was very enlightened. Muhammad, pick a guy. Uh, we're still lost and we're still ignorant. Everyone has to do this work themselves. There's no handouts. You know, we have to do the work. Um, we have to really look at who we are actually, see this world as it actually is, and deal with it. Life the teacher, life the master. Every circumstance of our life is the teaching. If we're listening, if we're paying attention, if we're responding. So, what is the good? The ultimate good. The aim of any worthwhile pursuit is the good, like we said, but there's many different goods if we look at it on a relative level. But I would like to show that the good is a balance that benefits both oneself and the greatest number of others. That when you do something, you think about, does this action benefit me? And does it benefit the most others? Right? That's smart, right? You could not think about yourself and just try to benefit others. It's like a martyr. But guess what? It's not fun to be that person. And that's not real service because they wear their paint on their, like a badge on their sleeve, and they tell you how much they're suffering. It's not real service. And if you only think about yourself, then you're just a thief, you know? There's plenty of people like that here in New York, these rich financial people who don't mind crushing a few people's lives to get wealthy, right? To improve their good. Or you're just completely mindless. You don't even think about the good. You just stumble through life. And a lot of those people end up rallying behind some charismatic leader and blindly following them. They're the most dangerous people in the country. That image, that Egyptian symbol, this shows how old this idea is. That is Maat, ancient, ancient. She represents a cosmic order. She represents truth and justice that's in nature and also in society. Everyone in an Egyptian culture would have tried to energize Maat, uphold Maat. It was their duty, right, to maintain this balance. In modern society, below her, I have the scales, the scale of justice. It's a balance, right? So you don't want to jump to extremes. That's how you know uh, you're not in the good, you know? And when you're in these extremes, we want to always balance what we're doing. And that's what meditation does. And last month, I presented the idea of loving kindness. And some of you had problems sending loving kindness to vicious creatures that eat the cute little creatures. So I wanted to bring this in as an example of the good in nature. So these are gray wolves. So gray wolves were eradicated from Yellowstone Park in the 1920s. And once they got wiped out, the elk populations grew unchecked, leading to overgrazing, especially on the willows and aspen trees. And because of that, the ground began eroding and destroying the habitat. So the wolves were reintroduced between 1995 and 96, and they started eating the elks and rebalancing the whole ecosystem. So elk behavior changed. They avoided the valleys and the riverbanks where they were the most vulnerable. Vegetation began to rebound. The willow trees started growing again, the aspens, the cottonwoods, and this began to stabilize the riverbanks, providing habitats. And because there was wood, the beaver populations returned. Because there was trees, and they built dams, and the dams flooded and created wetlands, and this brought back the birds and the fish. And all this new plant life allowed for this diversity of species to be maintained in this environment. And the coyote numbers decreased because the wolves were eating them, and this allowed um, all the small mammals, the foxes and the rodents, to recover. You see, this is called in biology, it's called a trophic cascade, where the top predator regulates the population and behaviors of the species on the lower levels, right? Ultimately shaping the entire ecosystems. So just because we see that act of them tearing apart an elk, which we, from our uh, understanding of the good, right? It's not good to tear something apart and eat it, right? But actually, they're doing a great service. And because of that, it maintains a balance for every other species there. We have to realize we're so small and ignorant. We're very small and ignorant. We have very limited life experiences. Um, we look at these things and we think we understand them, but we don't. We have to be silent and listen to life, listen to nature, what it has to teach us, right? This is the good of the wolf. The good of the wolf is they balance the herbivore population so it doesn't go out of control and destroy the vegetation, which is collapses the biodiversity and environment. What about in the body? Well, predators in the body are the cytotoxic T cells, right? These are the immune system. These cells seek and destroy infected and cancerous cells in your body every day. Much like the wolves in the ecosystem, they cull the weak and sick from the herd and destroy them, right? They recognize cells that display abnormal proteins like viral antigens and tumors. Because of their violence, you're able to live a balanced life. That's the good of the T cell. Um, so meditation also supports homeostasis. It's not always obvious how meditation is affecting us. It helps us regulate our autonomic nervous system, the part of your nervous system that dumps all the chemicals in your body, like cortisol, which, as we know, can cause severe harm over the long term, leading to disease. So meditation activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, calming down our fight and flight responses. If you have anxiety, panic disorder, whatever, actually, Rosalie, you're going to be a therapist, so you want to be very careful who you give those to. You got to make sure. But it can help regulate the body, right? It lowers heart rate, stabilizes blood pressure, improves digestion, lowers cortisol levels, helps improve regulation of melatonin to help you fall asleep. And serotonin, right? If you're mentally ill, you take serotonin intake inhibitors, right? This can help balance your serotonin and dopamine, right? Reduces chronic stress and helps support your circadian rhythm. Reduces chronic inflammation by downregulating overactive immune responses and improves immune surveillance for colds and fevers. I meditate every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and I've been sick maybe once in the past 3 years. So I can attest to that. It also helps improve your emotional and cognitive regulation, right? Your emotional resilience. You become less reactive. Leads to better decision making, reduced anxiety, less compulsive behavior. Is balancing. When you meditate, you're balancing your system on a chemical level, right? This biochemical level and a mental level, a psychological level. Someone who is enlightened in the Western context, if we look at these religions we often run away from. So here's in Judaism, this is the tree of life. And right here at the center is the bouncing point. This is called Tiferet. Tiferet. This is the enlightened mind we're seeking to achieve, the balance, right? And if we translate this over to Christianity, this would be um, in the Greek Gnostic, it would be the Christos, the Christ consciousness, the enlightened mind, this balance, this perfect balance. This is eudaimonia, the final end. And now that someone's attained that level of consciousness, they've attained balance, they've ended their suffering, they can now help bring balance to the people around them, to help their society, right? To be a balancing force in their community. It's not just for you, right? It expands and affects others. Here we can see it in the Christian, right? There's Christ, and we can see Tiferet there in the middle. So there's beautiful traditions if you dig a little. So if we want to begin balancing, moving towards the good, we could start doing practices that develop our eudaimonia, like regular meditation practice, doing the unconditional love practice, playing with art, uh, acts of service to those around us, right? Sleeping well, eating well, and some regular exercise. It doesn't have to be ambitious. That's all you need to be healthy to go through life. Is that you have your meditation practice that'll balance your mind? That's a good life. You're maintaining your health, you're maintaining your mind, you're responsible, you're responding to the problems as they arise, and you're trying to benefit the people around you, trying to improve their lives. So how do you know if you're doing this, right? How do we know if we're actually balancing, if we're doing it right? Well, this is the spaciousness I was talking about. Pam meditates on a roof under this vast blue sky. It's a perfect place to develop spaciousness. Every moment above your head is an infinity, vast endless space, completely incomprehensible. This is a Hubble telescope image of the world that we live in. And so as you meditate, the what you start out so small and tight and rigid, everything's concrete and sharp. And as you begin meditating consistently, it starts to loosen. There starts to be a gap, some breathing room. And as the years go by, the spaciousness starts to expand. And your life can still be as shitty as when you began, but it doesn't affect you the same. You're not moved by it. You can see something that causes you anger, and that anger, you feel it the same intensity, but it moves through you and you don't react. You don't suppress it. We don't suppress our joy. We don't suppress our happiness. No one has repressed happiness, but we have repressed negative emotions, the ones we don't like, the ones we don't want to feel. So someone who's spacious doesn't repress that. All that negativity moves through them and expands. They're able to process, they're balanced, they don't get knocked around. And I'm going to present some meditation techniques that hopefully can get you there. Um, One I really like is sky gazing too. Next time you're in a park, just look up at the sky and feel that infinity and let it into you, right? That feeling of infinity is happening inside of you, right? The sky is just cueing it. Feel that infiniteness. And when you imagine the universe on the scale, none of these problems matter at this scale. So brief, so impermanent, so fleeting our lives at this scale. So that's where we're going. All right, so now I'm going to begin guiding the meditation. And remember, you can turn your head away from the camera if it's uncomfortable meditating looking into the camera, or you can turn your screen off. But I think the position best for Westerners is it looks just like this Egyptian sculpture. It's called the hieratic pose. Many of Jewish, Christian, Muslim Hermeticists did this pose. So it's seated. You see that the hips are at a 90-degree level. This is important. If your hips are too low, you might get lower back pain. If they're too high, you might stress your knees. We want to be completely rested. We don't want a muscle activation. We want a straight spine, but we don't want it to be rigid. Think of like a sunflower. It's still flexible, it still moves. We want to relax our stomach and let it expand. We want to relax our chest and let it open. And you can just let your hands fall palms down onto your thighs where it's natural. We want to slightly tuck our chin so that our neck is aligned. And for now, we're going to keep our eyes open. And I want you to focus on your breath around the navel area. And as your mind wanders, you can label that thinking and return your mind to your stomach, this navel area. Feel the soothing rise and fall. Just stay with it. As we stay with the breath, it's very simple. We don't have to do anything. Just keeping our attention there on our stomach. We start to feel a stillness arise in the body. The thoughts begin to slow down, and a silence slowly emerges. And as we relax, a sense of space starts to come. The body starts feeling less dense, less solid, more energetic. Now let's close our eyes and imagine your body as luminous light. Nothing solid, just energy, just bright, luminous light shining out in endless space. Feel it. There's nothing to do. Whatever arises, just let it be and let go more and more, dissolving into this luminous light. You can't do it wrong, it's completely natural. And just rest. There's nothing to achieve, no one to impress. Just relax into this luminous light, vast space. That stillness as you meditate, as it grows, becomes a sanctuary. That inner silence becomes a sanctuary. And that vast space of the mind, the heart, can hold everything that comes. It can handle everything. It can work with anything. Slowly open your eyes. Very gently come back. And you can begin working now. There's no plan. Whatever inspires you at this moment, whether that's drawing, painting, writing, whatever you like to do. All right, how about 10 more minutes, okay? 5 more minutes. Right, put on the final touches. Your final touches. Let's wrap up. Oh, right. Okay, so let's see who wants to share. Who's got some cool artwork out there? Let's see. Um, Pam, do you want to share?
I wanted the eye to be lit from within.
Oh, that's great. You did
So
all
I
that
went to
just
the
now?
eye, worked on the eye,
Beautiful.
and she's
Beautiful.
thinking. She's thinking.
Yeah, it's got movement in the head. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Um, let's see, Till. Till's always tries to sneak his stuff off.
Okay, all right. Just still working on it. It's just one
Oh,
of
wow.
just something.
Nice.
Just
God, you guys are ambitious. You and Pam do these
yeah,
giant artworks.
like 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 blue and green and coming together. Something
It looks
something
like
something
a
new.
labyrinth.
Exactly. Yeah. Like some kind of like grass coming from something.
Nice. Let's see. Rosalie, what about you?
I did like a kind of like a visual of what I was seeing when I was meditating a little bit. Like I saw a lot of pink and yellow light and like felt like a very feminine energy kind of. So then I did like kind of like the it's really hard to see, but like kind of like the Mary's like blue veil a little bit.
Nice.
And then the hands, because I saw that when you were talking about the tree of life and um I drew my own hand and I tried to draw like little paint stains on my hands too. And then I did a lot of oranges because the oranges also felt bright and light and kind of feminine, I guess. So yeah.
Definitely some painting inspiration in there,
Yeah.
right?
Hopefully. Oh, I also like I drew my own bracelets too, kind of. I was working on that just last minute. Okay.
Nice. Nice, thank you. Phoenix, what you got?
So I kind of painted um like what you're talking about, the sanctuary kind of, and it's like a winding path through nature.
Hmm,
So I was just trying to create like different textures of the nature, like more long grass and then like kind of more plains and then more bushy. And yeah. So
beautiful. Beautiful. All right, Ron, you ready?
Before you can really tell I'm a student of art. Uh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, your background's eating it up.
Sorry.
Here, keep your face in it and then hold it right below your face. Yeah, keep your face visible. Yeah. You
Sorry.
gotta keep your face in the frame. Well, it looked like a fountain.
Yeah. Let me see if I can. You know what? Let me see if I can put on the blur. If I put on the blur thing, maybe that will somehow make it better. Um, so that way it doesn't. Maybe it'll confuse it less.
Yeah.
Uh,
In the more, yeah, there you
so yeah,
go. Your painting's been censored.
yeah. It's blurred. It's just a wrong blur. This thing blurred. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I see the fountain. I saw it.
Yeah. So it's like kind of like the fountain of youth, like based on like what you were saying with the guy, the picture you showed of the guy at the start. It was
Yeah.
like like what everybody would want, and it. I kind of saw like a flash of not like sort of like that, but like through like this like a path and some like trees and bushes on each side,
Mm,
looking into like heading towards the state like a path heading on the
mm.
way to the state. It's amazing. It keeps getting it clear for a second, and then it goes
Your
out again.
your artwork's too explicit for Zoom. It's being
Yes,
censored.
it's being said with love and dance.
All right,
God,
well, thank you, Ron.
sorry, I can't go into it. I'm trying. Well, anyway, I saw a bit of the sky as well, which was, like at night,
Uh-huh.
just the moon and planets with kind of like that, that's that sunset kind of sense about
Mm.
things. It's you still feel like you have some light by the moonlight, and I tried to kind of do like a shooting star here or a comet, but
Uh-huh.
that's basically it. Unfortunately, I have yet to refine, some of the details and whatnot. But anyway,
There you go. Bring it to class on Friday.
yes, yeah, yeah. But yeah, sorry, I can't get any better than that. But
All
still
right.
working, still working on it.
All right. Does anyone have any meditation questions, experiences they'd like to share, thoughts, you know, whatever's on your mind?
It's always interesting when you compare the East and the West as far as philosophies and things like that, and ideologies, and it's yeah. I thought it can be a case of where the grass is greener on both on the other side of the fence, unless you try to integrate the one side into the other, then you're really making it work, and utilizing both viewpoints to get the fuller sense of like three dimensions, of existence. So
Yeah, there's things, you know, when I first hopped on, I was talking with Till. Till's looking into Stoicism, which is very, very close to Buddhism. It's almost shockingly close, the philosophy. In fact, a lot of people speculate, did they have contact with the East? Because the ideas are so similar. Um,
yeah,
but it's completely Western. It's completely digested and put it in a Western format. Um, I began by studying Zen, a Japanese style of Buddhism, which is very different than Chinese Buddhism or Indian Buddhism, because they had time to digest Buddhism and make it correct for their culture, right? And in Zen, in Soto Zen, they just sit you down and you stare at a wall. And they come back in 10 years, they go, "How are you doing?"
yeah,
But they have an extremely mindful culture. You go outside, no, there's no trash anywhere. The crime rate's very low. Everyone's working very hard, very mindfully. It's completely different than American culture, right? So you can take a Japanese person and drop them in there, and they'll probably do okay. But an American, a redneck from the Gulf Coast, you drop them in uh, that, and it's pretty harsh. It was
yeah,
it was a lot. And then Tibetan Buddhism's a whole other thing. These are from a nomadic yak farmers, you know,
yeah,
out in a tundra, a northern desert, in the mountains.
yeah,
Uh, we can't even comprehend what that life is like, right? And then you go to Tibetan practices, they have to be dramatically translated to fit a Western context. Um,
I can relate to that. I think I could just sit and stare at a wall for a couple hours, like every day, and just really, appreciate just the stuff that came to mind, because you really just don't get enough time to stop and think and respond and do a lot of things in the West that I wish we would.
for me, it
So
was painful at first. It was actually painful physically. I sweated when I started meditating, and they do long, you start out doing like 40-minute meditations. It's brutal. Remember, my whole lower body would be numb and I couldn't stand up, you know? Um, but you go to Japan and everyone's sitting on the floor all the time.
oh yeah,
They're
yeah,
used to sitting down, so I like to teach meditation in a chair because we sit in chairs. We don't sit on the floor all the time. We're not that flexible.
yeah,
They even cut the legs off their chairs so they can sit in the chair on the ground.
yeah. It's the idea of like a futon, because it's like
Yeah.
but yeah, no, yeah. I wanted somebody in my years ago in my grad school class, it was said how like it's strange how like Americans feel like the need to be elevated from the floor, but they don't you know they don't they feel like they need to have that
Well, it's
lift.
probably because European cities were infested with rats, things like
Well,
that, you know?
I-
They were dirty places. It was a dirty, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. I
But
guess that
yesterday me and Phoenix were talking about a lot of this Buddhism came into America in the 60s and 70s. Um, a lot of the Tibetans were fleeing the communist takeover of Tibet, where they killed and burned down cities and everything, you know. They were seeking asylum, and they were worried that their tradition was going to die. Um, and here you go. You got this very wealthy, population. These people are, but the Zen people came here had a very hard time with Americans because they're dirty. They were hippies, right? They were dirty. They weren't wearing shirts. They weren't wearing shoes. They're doing drugs all the time. It's the complete opposite of Japanese culture.
the irony is they also like to stay on the floor as well. So but no, it's yeah, no, but it really is interesting because there's that suddenness, a more of a rushed mentality, like you say, and it's the same thing with like the toilet as well. It's like the need to be out more elevated from the floor as opposed to closer to the floor, which is like actually not as healthy of a position, being more elevated. So that's why you have these things, like these kind of, I don't know what you call them, but like step stools that people have, you know, near the toilet now for a better position, for better sitting position. And you also have these things at desks, where instead of you're sitting just on a chair, you're kind of like leaned forward a bit, for like at a computer desk and whatnot, workstations now.
hmm
So yeah, it's an interesting, way to go about it. And yeah, so some of them I'm sure are more comfortable and others less. Um,
But
but
there was a fascination in the West.
oh,
The Vietnam War was going on, and there was um, all this protesting, right? Feminism, black rights. Um, there's this kind of chaos, and there was this fascination with these foreign people, you know? Like, here's the answer. Here's this utopia of wisdom. And they wanted to see the guy in the robes who could do the levitator or whatever, right? It was a spiritual materialism. And the teacher that me and Phoenix were talking about, I've actually trained with his students. His name was Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And he
yeah,
decided if he was going to teach Americans, he did not wear his robes. He dressed in a suit and he spoke with an English accent. And that was a big letdown. Where's the magical Tibetan man?
yeah.
But he did that so that they would have a real spirituality. It's not this fantastic escape, right? Which I think, um, I mean, I grew up Christian and I didn't like it. I grew up Southern Baptist and I had a lot of bad experiences with Christianity. I went to a Christian elementary school. One of my earliest memories is the teacher reading a book from another religion, and we were enjoying it, and then she ripped it in half and screamed at us. This was blasphemy. They would burn in hell if we read things like this, and she threw it in the trash.
Wow.
Uh, that's how I grew up, you know. But
So
you see, I went because I was fed up. I was fed up. And you see horrible things living in the deep south, racism, ignorance and stuff.
ironic that she would happen to see the other side and having been exposed and learned. I
Yeah,
guess.
there's a lot of beautiful things in Christianity. I really like Gnostic Christianity.
but a lot of these things are not in conflict. It's kind of a ignorance to think that, oh,
Yeah.
because
And it's funny, if you look at the growing religions in Asia, it's Christianity.
yeah,
The growing numbers of Buddhism are in the West, the growing numbers of Christian.
everybody wants something different, but it's like, yeah, when you see that it's not magic, but it's elements that work practically into your life and you be useful, then it's you're the more intelligent for it. You're the more practically utilitarian, for what you've picked up and what you can how it can help you practically day to day. So it's I think when people put their subjectiveness aside, you pick up a lot more, because I think it's kind of funny that, yeah, if there is such a thing as reincarnation, and you're reincarnated in some other culture or the other side, it'll be just as adamant that that's the way to be, or that's the perspective to be, as anyone else. And it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. Yeah, because this is the cards you're dealt, that you have to take it serious. You have to take it. You have to take it totally seriously, which you don't. You take it with for what it's worth, but you can't take it too seriously. Otherwise, you don't get the. You're limiting yourself to a lot of other detail that's beneficial. It's like getting bread without getting without getting unstarched, unbleached bread, but if you have the natural, natural wheat. It's like if you get in this regular state, it's a lot more nutritious, than if you turn it into like Wonder Bread. So, or if you turn it into, you know, I don't know, some other thing that's just like cake mix or something like that. I don't know. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you get a lot more out of it. Look at the original source.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
it's like,
does anyone else have any questions too? I want to give time to everyone. Does anyone else have a question they want to ask? Phoenix?
So I had this question because I kind of forgot to talk to you about it yesterday.
Mhm.
So I'm reading this book called The Divided Self by R.D. Laing, and I think it would be interesting for this class as well, because it's kind of, I think it kind of goes to the other side of like not being connected to all of the things that ego connects itself to, as far as like hedonism and stuff. So R.D. Laing, like for like some background, was a psychiatrist who wrote a ton about psychosis and schizophrenia. And like he's really controversial himself, but I am reading his book right now, so I just wanted to talk about his viewpoints and like toss some ideas around. But so I had wrote down like that he describes like someone that's going through schizophrenia or psychosis. In one part, like a certain type of person going through this might have a lack of connection to parents, home, commitment, appetite, power, beauty, wit, courage, loyalty, or fame, like things that people strive to have or like get more of. And so I thought it was interesting because it did remind me of Buddhism, or like, what I've been practicing with you, where you kind of try to separate or like try to let go of some of these things and making them so important in your life. And so I wanted to know, because my question was kind of like, I know you said as we go deeper into practice together, you have to have like a really good grounding of yourself, because some people do kind of lose themselves as they try to like do more and more with their spiritual practice. So I wanted to know, like, maybe is this some of what you're talking about, or your thoughts on that?
Yeah. In not in your everyday spirituality, but in intense spirituality, we're doing long retreats where you're doing very serious meditations. There's dangers. You know, meditation can bring a stability, but at the higher levels, it's supposed to be destabilizing, right? And to do those higher level practices, it's a prerequisite that you're mentally healthy, that you're strong and you're courageous, right? Because it's destabilizing. Um, so what happens is people don't have a good reason to be there. They don't know why they're doing spirituality. They don't have a clear aim. And maybe that aim isn't very virtuous either, right? They might be there for selfish reasons. And you reap what you sow. You get what you deserve, right? Um, if you're serious about doing spiritual practice, you need to spend a long time developing your reason why you're doing it. And it needs to be aligned with the good, that you're doing this to benefit yourself and the most other beings as possible. If you're just doing it for you, it's not going to go very far. You can do it, you can do intense practice, but if it's not for the bigger picture, right? For helping others, for being of service, right? Uh, it will be destabilizing. Um, there has to be some type of moral ground, right? So people who explore, right? Think about people who like experiment with hallucinogens and stuff. Those are the kind of people that get in trouble because they might not be mentally healthy enough or stable enough to take on the things they're taking on, right? Um, like a lucid dream practice, you know, you might screw up your sleep. If you're not mentally healthy, it can go bad very fast when you screw up your sleep. Or if you're in one of these in-between states and you see like a scary monster or whatever, that can be very destabilizing, right? If you're lucid dreaming or um, if you're neurotic and you're sitting in your head all day meditating, it's not good. That's why I mentioned Rosalie, like going to therapy, you don't want to give a person with panic disorder a closed eye meditation because they're already trapped in their body and their mind all day long. Tell them to go take a nice, relaxing walk where they feel safe, right? They might not feel safe in the woods, maybe just around a track. And that's it. That's meditation at their level. Someone depressed, don't tell them to meditate. They need to move. Tell them to go exercise. Get them to exercise. Get them to move. Someone with anxiety, you don't want to give them a closed eye thing either. Give them an externalizing exercise where they look at the detail of something outside of them, right? Because in mental health, you're trapped in yourself. You're trapped behind your nose, and you're stuck in this cage, and you can no longer relate with the external world. You can't connect with the people around you. So meditation can be very dangerous for them, right? Um, so an active meditation like art making, walking, music, something where there's a community that you feel safe in, can be very beneficial and healing. Um, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense. And I also feel like it was so interesting too about, because a lot of people who are going through like psychotic breaks or like mental health and stuff, like where they're like far gone, a lot of them do describe um like a lot of religious experience. And so I thought it was kind of interesting how you can find yourself without those connections that in one way could be really beneficial for you, as far as like letting go of being in having your ego control you and chasing after like some happiness that would be fleeting in that way. But going all the way on the other spectrum where, you know, you've let go of all these connections and now you're kind of like lost within yourself, or lost in a different reality.
If you go into a retreat, you're gonna see some stuff. Stuff's gonna happen. You know, just like a psychotic person, but a psychotic person can't tell the difference between their mental projections and reality, right?
Um, I wanted to add on to that because
Yeah.
in our program we always say like you can't teach a drowning person how to swim, which I think is a good metaphor for that.
That's
You
a
know,
great metaphor.
you have to ground yourself in reality first, for sure. Also, Phoenix, I wanted to ask you if you've ever read anything by Murray Bowen. He also studied very early theories about why people become schizophrenic, and I don't necessarily think he's 100% right, but his theory does relate to like the community or the caregivers that children have when they're young, and how frequently people who have schizophrenia who do better in life when they're away from their family. What happened when their early life with their family is they were put in like lose-lose situations. So like the example we study is like a child who has a really cold parent who never hugs them or kisses them or anything. The parent will then ask for affection or like complain that the child is not being affectionate enough, if that makes sense. So it's like the child's sense of reality is like always going to be distorted because they think, oh, like my mom wants a hug, but she doesn't, that kind of thing. And so schizophrenia for a lot of people can be like a deeply protective, like they have to form their own sense of reality because they never had early experiences of like a stable reality. I don't know. I mean, it's just something to study if you're interested, but
Yeah,
I think
thanks.
it makes a lot of sense with meditation. Like you need to be in touch with reality first, for sure.
Mhm. And the name was Michael Bowen, I think you said?
Murray Bowen, and it's the family systems theory of schizophrenia.
Cool. I'll definitely jot that down. I think that's totally spot on with what he's saying as well, and I agree. I mean, it is early psychology and stuff, so of course some things are, you know, controversial now, or but there is still a lot of pioneering in that, and you know, they definitely like furthered you know, where we're at now. So it's still important. Saying.
Anyone else? Hey, Ron?
I would just yeah. I actually it's interesting. I sat in on a meeting like about like years ago. I 15, 20 years back, and I didn't understand it at first. I thought that like why are you know schizophrenics seeing like these things, and why don't they just try to like reshape their thoughts or not? No, I didn't get the idea that they were actually physically seeing these things, like the same way if you took drugs you would see these things. They would see these things, and it just it gives you a whole lot of other perspective, that this is it's that there's a lot more going on that you really need to work with. And in terms of like being tied in, that's why it is important to be tied in, so that if you do experience these things yourself, somehow they've come into your reality, you can try to take a step backwards by saying, okay, this is what I'm seeing, but I'm going to try to use my connections elsewhere to other people to perhaps pull me out of that, and to have another perspective, to try to see otherwise and get that other grounding again. So that's why it's both perspectives are important, to be able to pivot and kind of go back and forth and really understand. understand things better. Um, yeah, yes. I mean, I think I didn't realize that, but like what Rosalie was saying, and then I guess Phoenix was also, like related to some of her earlier things. Was that schizophrenia can also be metaphorical, in terms of a sense of how you just perceive things emotionally in a different way, or back, from your experience, having these different models, or I forget what psychologists call them, but these different, modules of, you know, uh, experience that, or that you frame your reality around. And yeah, it does, make me realize, that, it's important to, try to, you know, see outside that when you can, and really, yeah, you have to have your own subjective experience, but to see outside that, to reshape it where you can, if it's helpful. So just one last thing is, I'm sorry, I was going to say before you speak, I always forget this. Speaking of subjective, my voice sounds a lot different to most people. I actually had surgery on my vocal cords about 40 some odd years back, and that's why I sound the way I do. I always forget to bring it up, because to me, my voice subjectively sounds different to me, as everybody's voice does to themselves. But it sounds more like a two-tone standard voice, rather than a dichotomous kind of sound, with like two different broken sounds, the way it does to me on a recording and to everyone else. So I forget to mention it. So that's why I'm bringing it up now, just to let everybody know. So to address it as a potential elephant in the room. But yeah, no, I'll let the Pamela, I believe it is, speak next.
Yeah, I've always been told that your reality is a reflection of your inner world. That it mirrors back to you your inner world. But they were talking about schizophrenia and all that, and the disconnection of reality. But who's to say what the defining reality is?
How would you define it?
I mean, it's interesting to me to think of my reality as a reflection back of my inner world. Because when I'm feeling better, the world does feel and appear better to me, feels better. The vibe is better. But you know, I don't think that maybe that's a little self-centered to think that it's my reality.
Well, what about this? We could all agree that the light is on in my room. We can make a truth statement about that. The light is either on or it's off, right? Now, whether the light is good or bad, that cannot be a true statement, right? I think that's more what people mean when they say that your reality is a mirror, because it bounces back your reactions to the things that are out there. The light is neutral, but how I relate to that light becomes something subjective. It tells me something about me. Just like when we did the loving kindness meditation, that unconditional love meditation, you label some people as evil and some people as great, and you give out your care accordingly. But as it showed with like maybe a boyfriend or something that started off as a neutral person, became someone you loved, and then they did something bad to you, you broke up with them, they became someone you hate, and then later in your life you don't even remember them and they're just a neutral person again. Right? That's the mirror. Is that more helpful?
Yeah.
And maybe Rosalie, since she's going into therapy, could put in some 2 cents here. What do you think, Rosalie?
I think that makes sense. I mean, going back to treating people who are out of touch with reality, either with schizophrenia or even like a manic episode, there is no, we learn in school, like there's no reason to try and tell them like, oh, that shadow in the corner isn't real, or that, religious experience you had on the bus didn't happen, or something like that. It's about making people feel as safe as possible for them and as connected as possible for them. And I think that's what's really interesting about studying those kinds of personality disorders. If, we're going to get all psyche, is like, at the end of the day, I think people truly just need like genuine compassion and curiosity and like connection. And it doesn't matter so much, I guess, what their sense of reality is. I mean, of course, like you can't really do group therapy, or like you were saying, you can't really do meditation with certain kinds of distorted perceptions, but there's always a chance to just like be there for people, I guess, which is what I'm interested in. I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Want to say something, Phoenix?
I did, because I kind of liked where Pamela was going with it, where I feel like it relates back to what I was reading about too, because R.D. Laing would say like mental illness is often a response, a sane response to an unhealthy world. So I feel like in that way, it's kind of like, we have these things set up where we are kind of chasing this hedonistic type of lifestyle, like, say, like unreal expectations of what safety are. And in that way, like making, like consumerism, well, no, like all these big things, that are going on within the world, capitalism, blah, 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 that, people are having like responses to this unhealthy way that the world is set up. And sometimes it kind of makes sense why people are losing it, and maybe questioning it should make us question, is this really the right way to be like setting up our world? Is there a more, like how Rosalie was saying, like compassionate way to be connecting with each other and whatnot? Should we be kind of like, instead of going after capitalism and yada yada yada, like should we be more focused on ways societies were like way before we were set up like this, or is there a way that we can evolve past this kind of thing? Maybe that would help mental health as a whole for everyone.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think I don't know. I don't remember exactly. I had some friends who were talking about like kind of the philosophy of like the world being a mirror and stuff like that. And it just made me think like the amount of emails we have to write every single day, or the amount of like single-use plastic products we use, and then we have to like process in our mind where all of that's going. Like just in the last decade or two, everything is almost like designed to make us feel like stressed out and like things are scarce. And it's like a big commodity in this world to make people feel insecure so that things can get done, but it's not healthy, you know.
That's why I brought this topic today, because I feel absolutely disgusted when I look at the news. It's just horrifying. It's disgusting, you know? And the corruption of our culture is deeply depressing. Um, and I don't think it's gonna get much better for a while. I think they're profiting off of this uh, entertainment, this doom entertainment. It's very profitable, and they're profiting off of people's fear instincts, these animal instincts, these survival instincts, right? Um, all the more reason to focus on eudaimonia, developing a self-sufficiency and understanding what you can control, what you can't, just like in Stoicism. It's a big thing. What is under my control? What do I have a decision on? And where does my decision end? and accepting and living with it. They called it amor fati, right? The love of fate. That actually, when things don't go your way, they embraced it. They embraced whatever arose in life. It's really beautiful, Stoic philosophy. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a frightening world. Anyone else?
Sure. I was just gonna say, like, um, I think that, the news is really frightening right now, but I also feel like the news has always been super frightening. Like, I feel like whatever time period we've been in, like we're always going through a lot of tumultuous things. Like when you look back, I feel like there was always a time of like tons of fear and um change and crazy stuff going on. So yeah, I do agree with you where it's like um if we can't, you know we are where we are, like we're not in control of everything. So just like trying to be in control, not in control, but trying to do the good where we can, like with who we can and whatnot.
I mean, the real adepts of spiritual practice shine in these moments. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh, maybe you guys are familiar with him, went through two wars. One of them was the Vietnamese War, right, with America. And he was the head of a Zen temple there. And there was a bombing going on. And he decided that they needed to do something. And he said that everyone in the temple, they can't just sit there and meditate through this, they have to go out. And the anchor of the meditation was helping those affected by the bombing. And he wrote poetry, anti-war poetry, and he never took sides. He was exiled to France, continued to protest, continued to teach Dharma, started many, he was a very influential teacher. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche also fled through the mountains, hunted by soldiers. 300 of them escaped, only 13 of them survived. And he lived a very hard life, and it's the amount of trauma, the amount that would have affected someone, and then he goes and he starts Naropa University and founds all these institutions and basically creates American Buddhism. It's extraordinary. Um, and many of the lamas that got caught were kept in these kind of concentration camps, and they managed. They were that mentally strong. It's an extraordinary mental strength. Um, Viktor Frankl's another one, Holocaust survivor. He created logotherapy. Extraordinary mental strength. There's many, many examples throughout history um, where people just discover these extraordinary resources within them, and nothing could stop them. Nothing could break them. They're completely unbreakable. That is it. That is an adept. That is a spiritual master. Someone who cannot be stopped, cannot be broken, despite anything that's happening. And they manage to help and liberate others, free others, right? So to me, that's what Tiferet means in the Jewish tradition, or the Christ consciousness or enlightenment is that. It's the whole point. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I have a different kind of like with Viktor Frankl and everything. I think in the West, we tend to believe the Christian idea that like suffering cleanses you of your sins, like just because you went through a really hard time, that automatically makes you a stronger, better, deeper person. And I kind of wrestle with that. Like, I think sometimes survivors aren't necessarily like better people. They just statistically like survived. I don't know. It's like a spiritual thing that I wrestle with still. But I mean, obviously, you gave examples of people who did do a lot of good for the world, but I just think about some people who have lived through really hard times and then they perpetrate those cycles of abuse or trauma. Um, and I don't really know where to like sort that out in my mind yet. But, and I do think that in different cultures, you know, like being Jewish, like we're less likely to kind of have that idea that, you know, like suffering absolves you of your sins and like penance and stuff. That I think that is more of a Christian idea, but I don't know.
I mean, there's very powerful spiritual, like Germany, Jakob Böhme was one. Just a shoemaker. He saw a reflection in a bowl. That was it. That was his spiritual awakening. After
Yeah.
that, he wrote this revolutionary theology that influenced the philosophy of Hegel and Nietzsche and stuff. So you don't have to suffer. So I agree with you. But it's how they responded to it, right? That's incredible. Because, yeah, you'd expect someone to be completely broken and down and,
Well,
that's,
and plenty of people are too, is the
yeah.
thing. You know, like people could go through exactly what Viktor Frankl went through and then turn out to be terrible people,
Yeah,
you know, or just complicated people that don't see things the same way, at least.
I had a breakthrough through the guided meditation where you at one point said, envision yourself as golden light, pure light, radiating. And I did that, and it was the perfect meditation at the moment. I felt this, it was just an amazing feeling. I just want to thank you.
thank you, Pam. What did it feel like? Why don't you say more?
Expansive, and like all thoughts and everything drifted away, and I was just particles of light, just atoms of light, particles of light.
That's it. That's the spaciousness.
Like like my identity disintegrated.
Yeah, and in higher level training, you develop that spaciousness and you're able to kind of you have thoughts, but you're able to make them transparent or soft so they don't affect you as much. And also when you start working with emotions, there's retreats where you call up very heavy negative emotions or you think about bad experiences in your life. Yeah, Rosalie, go ahead. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
But yeah, you'd act them out like an actor. You get them going, and then you open up into that space, and you don't do anything with them, and they expand and release. That's where it goes. That's spaciousness at a high level meditation, but it has to grow in you. And that's the sky is perfect. Sky gazing. Try it next time you're up there. Look into the sky and think about the infinity that's above you. Bring it into you. In any moment when things are going bad, you can drop into that. Just for a moment, just take a break. Just walk to the bathroom 1 minute. Drop into that space, right? Give yourself a break and then go back out. When times are hard, that's what it's for, is when times are hard. If we just throw our meditation away, throw our spirituality away when times are hard, then we weren't really doing it. We didn't understand what it was for. Anybody else? Yeah.
I was going to have first. I was going to ask if that's what is meant by transcendental, or meditation. I was going to also say that it relates to what you were talking about at the start, and that I find it's like if you plan these these kind of oases of regularly scheduled, that's really they're kind of like pit stops where you calm down and you can really recharge and manage the bends and the turns on the tracks a lot better after after you have them. So even if, like you say, you schedule for a minute, that's good. I think if you have it regularly, time where you have like an hour or something like that, it's even better to let you regroup.
I promote meditating with eyes open because I want this to be something that you bring into your day. If you can only do it with your eyes closed, that's not very helpful. You're going to be tripping and falling down, right? We practice in a safe, controllable environment, right? Our meditation cushion, our chair, wherever, and then we slowly bring that into life. And having these little breaks in the day helps to break up the pattern that's always running in our head, right? And that's a disruption, right? But transcendental meditation is a very specific tradition where they repeat a mantra to shut off a part of their mind, and then they go into a type of trance that drops way down in a brave wave state. It's kind of like going to sleep. And I don't recommend that because that's not very useful to everyday life, right? Um, there are meditations where trances and where you could do things with trance, but like I said, I want to get you grounded in your life. I want you to get grounded in your body. I want you to be able to see yourself bit by bit clearer, the good and the bad, and your life clearer, the good and the bad, and be able to manage it because you're growing this space, right? The space isn't an escape, it's a way that you can hold more of your life. Because when the space is small, when we start, it's too painful to look at everything. You repress it, you make it subconscious. But as the space grows, you're able to bring more and more out from the subconscious into your daily life. You're integrating.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, you guys talk today. This is great. Usually it's quiet. Usually you gotta like pull some teeth. All right. Well, let's all go then. You can go now if you need to go, Pam. Thank you. But we can do the dedication. And traditionally, this sets our intention that our practice is not just for us, right? Developing ourself benefits everyone else too, right? And then we get to a point where we can help others. So let's just come back into our meditation posture. And while I'm saying this, you can visualize this, whatever way is natural to you. You can say it if you want. Um, but all the merit, all the good that we've created, we're sending it out to other beings through our imagination. So just come into your body. May this love flow outwards, igniting the hearts of all beings, illuminating endless dawns. All right, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for talking and all the input. It was great today.
Uh, thank you all, and thank you all for